Hi everybody, you're now experiencing the Gretna Bill Show.
Ed, thanks for coming over. You were actually the last episode that we did before all the shit went down.
I feel privileged twice on the Gretna Bill Show.
Your expertise will be sorely needed here in a moment when we'll get to that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was today is May 4th. So what happened May 4th, 1970?
Kent State, of course.
4 dead in Ohio. Neil Young wrote the song like 20 minutes, whatever. What a great song. I think Josh is going to be able to get that on this broadcast at some point. Here's the deal. You know, that was the beginning of me. I'm like 12 years old. My dad's telling me that I'm going to get registered for the draft and I'm going to Vietnam and I need to get a haircut. I'm like, what? What the hell's going on here? You know, I was like, how can this be? So anyway, that's where, you know me, I'm always don't trust the government. That's why I started there. I'm 12 years old. They're telling me I got to go shoot some guy I don't even know and I got to get a haircut. That was the main thing. I'm like, a haircut? Are you kidding me? So everybody wonders why I have my hair so long like this. It's because of that. Because it was always get a haircut. The vice principal, he'd come in, you know, he'd be standing beside you in the hallway, and you'd walk in, and we'd all line up, straighten up, because we were all out in the cars, like doing something we shouldn't be doing. And then we'd come into school, you know, and he would look over your haircut, and this guy's, I forget his name now, but he was a big guy, big tall guy. And he would just sit there like this, he'd stand there on the side of the hallway, and we'd all straighten up and walk through. And he wouldn't do anything. He'd be looking you over. And then if your hair was like down over your collar and shit, he would like, whoom, he'd grab you, and he'd jack you up against the school hallway, and he'd go, get a haircut, young man. You're not coming back till you do. Get out of here, get a haircut. So then I go home, and I'd tell what happened, and my dad would go, yeah, he's right, get a haircut. And another thing, you're getting drafted, and you're going to Vietnam. I go, what about Canada? He goes, no, you're going to Vietnam. So, you know, that's where my distrust of the government started. And so today's a significant day for us to start podcasting again about what we're going to do with the May 4th, 1974, dead in Ohio. What a crock of shit. We were, you know, I had a bunch of guys, friends, and I'd go up there. I was like, I'm going to school at Kent State, you know. And I'd go up and hang out with them in the dorm rooms. And the next thing you know, I'm seeing 4 dead in Ohio. How did that go down? National Guard went in there and they actually shot 4 people. What's your remembrance?
I think 30, 40 rounds in 13 seconds. You know, most of the kids didn't take it seriously. They thought there was blanks to scare, you know, disperse the crowd.
Yeah.
And when they realized that bullets were ricocheting off the concrete and people were falling, I think that really was a watershed moment in American history.
I do
the
too.
National Guard would actually shoot unarmed college students.
Very good. Nicely put. And it was a turning point for me in my life because I thought I will never trust the federal government. I mean, don't get me wrong. Good people start off by running for local political office, and then they move to state, and then they move to federal government. They're still good people. I mean, I believe 95% of people are pretty good, right?
I would say 99% of people.
There you go. So you go into federal government, it's not like you're an evil person, but once you get there, you see, that's where the problems start, because then you gradually start to make modifications in your behavior to adapt to the mafia, the federal mafia. And
well, don't you think it's pressure to conform?
Totally. And plus you got a kid in college or 2, you got the shore home, you know, you got the wife wants to join the tennis club and the golf club. You got all kind of pressures going on. You just submit. Machiavelli, another great Italian. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's just the way it is. Once you get up in there, you're corruptible. So I guess that's the whole theme of what we've been saying is you're never going to get rid of the federal government. Obviously you need them. We'll talk about that. And you're never going to get rid of corruption in the federal government. So the only thing you can do is try to minimize the federal government and minimize the corruption. You know, it's like, yeah. So anyway, you know, another great thing about today being May 4th, normally you and I would be talking about the Tour de Gretna. And this is the billboards you've seen all around town, another great waste of tax dollars, which I'm proud of. it's the Tour de Gretna, Tour of Lebanon Valley. Nikki, kudos, man. It was going to be a great day this Saturday. We have how many bands we have lined up?
We had 2 wonderful bands lined up. We had some good beer lined up. We had food trucks lined up. It was going to be an all-day party.
Oh, man. And the young working men and
New working men.
Yeah, Corey
take off
Byron,
from
maybe.
The New Working Men, a takeoff from the Grateful Dead album, Working Men. And we were going to have the Mendez brothers.
Even better. Terrific. What a great day. We'd all been racing. I would have been sucking hind tit for sure. That's the only thing I'm looking forward to this year was not getting out of that. Because, I'm 64 and I'm in the 55 plus with like Spittle, Ober, Meesmer, Olmsted, you know all the players. And I was thinking, man, maybe I could just say that I got to help Ed with the race. I don't want to saddle him with all that work and I don't have to ride in it because I couldn't bear to go around the first lap off the back, which I anticipated would happen. Yeah, so anyway, you've been getting your miles in. How's that been going? What are you averaging a week? We've all been getting our miles in, I guess.
Actually, buying a gravel bike was probably one of the best things I've ever done. It gets me out of, riding more often. Gets me actually out on the road as well. I think I rode about 220 miles last week, which was good for me. I've got a couple 50 milers, a couple 60 milers, and I'm planning on doing a century to celebrate my 30 years of survival from cancer next week.
Can I get in on that action?
More than happy to have somebody.
Woo! Yeah, dude, that's awesome. 30 years, dude. You've been fighting a great fight. I got to do that with you for sure. I've been taking little surveys. I ran into Spittle and Billy Kerr, and I ran into Barry Free. And so anyway, I always ask them the same question. What do you see in the future, 6 months down the road for not only racing, but group riding in general? And then what do you see a year down the road? What are you seeing?
Well, I honestly, I think we've got to wait until Pennsylvania opens back up and we see the rebound. How many new cases will we see? The only thing we have to go on right now is 1918 influenza pandemic. And the second round and the third round were much worse than the first. I know people need to get back to work. People are eager to get out of the house and get back to a normal life, but I don't know what normal is right now. I'm afraid that if we move too quickly and we obviously don't have testing for antibodies or testing for the virus, that we could be in a real shitstorm in 2 months.
Yeah, and I listened to Warren Buffett this last weekend, the Oracle of Omaha. And he said a couple of things. Not only is it like the Spanish flu of 1917, 1918, which took 2 or 3 years to unwind fully, but it's also a recession that goes along with that. And Buffett was making the point that when we went into the Great Depression in 29, 30, 31, that we really never recovered until 52 was his. Now we had World War II in there, but that was interesting. To the point where Warren, who was always very optimistic, who was always bought low, sell high. In every disaster, the 2008, 2009, he was the first guy in to buy at the bottom and made a shitload of money. And, he sold all his airlines, even though they're down right now. He sold all the airlines and he's got, I don't know how many billions, 124 billion on the sidelines, I think I heard. And he says, I don't see any opportunity at all. Even though the market's kind of held up pretty good, and there's reasons for that. We're going to talk about that later in MMT, modern monetary theory. But so anyway, I was talking to Vicky Barkley the other day, and she's like, Dirty Cans at 200 we're scheduled. We're going to do it September 7th. I was like, right on. She goes, I'm still training. I saw it today. We looked at Tour de France, August 29th to September 20th. So what's your thoughts on that? Are they going to pull it off or not?
Well, there are a number of events that they've got scheduled. Real quick, just let me run these down. You've got the Giro and the Volta actually overlapping at the same time. And while the Giro and the Volta are going on, you got Liège-Bastogne, the Tour of Flanders, and Paris-Roubaix.
Holy cow.
So, I mean, those are all going to be grouped together at the same time. So there's going to be all kinds of conflict for riders.
Whoa.
And stress on the teams to try and put together, competitive teams both in the Giro and the Volta, and of course the classics.
Whoa. Yeah, that's a lot to wrap my arms around. So you think they're going to go down with all those?
I think that countries in Europe have done a superior job of trying to track the disease and get it under control, that it may be possible. If this was the United States, I would say no.
Yeah. Everybody's watching Sweden, of course, because they kind of didn't lock down. And they talked to the epidemiologist minister, and he said, aside from politics, he goes, the reason why it was successful here and it can't be a success in the United States is because we caught it way before you. And that was his claim. That's why it's sort of working for them.
I completely disagree with his statement, because the Swedish death toll has increased by 39.6% by them doing absolutely nothing. Now you can imagine in the United States, on an average day, 7,700 people die daily in the United States.
Got it.
So imagine increasing that by 39.6%. So quick math puts you at about 2,500 people, something like that. So
per capita.
Yeah. So
per their population.
Yeah. So I mean, if you took the death toll 7,700 people a day and added an additional close to 40%, we'd have 2,900 people dying a day.
I'm a visual kind of a guy. So when they showed the media, who we don't trust either, in addition to the federal government, never trust the media, never trust the federal government, I'm just saying. They show this picture of an outdoor cafe with like this Swedish blonde chick throwing back a big mug, and you're like, wow, dude, it must have worked. That looks great. But of course, I was thinking, how can that be bad? But yeah. So that's the way they portray it, right?
I mean, the comparisons.
That's always the video clip.
The comparisons they're doing are the Netherlands to Sweden, and how the Netherlands were on top of it, and their death rate is very small. Sweden, it's actually pretty high.
All right, then. Okay, and most of the people I talked to say the Tour de France isn't going to go down, but I went there, I read the website, and knowing the economic impact and so on and so forth, I think that just like we want to get baseball going again by June under certain conditions, I think that France has that same motivation to get the Tour de France going.
I mean, it's their national identity.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So that's politics. That's Tour de Gretna. That's the current status of things. We've been all riding. Everyone's, actually, I'm kind of get used to this isolation thing. Now, granted, I'm in a very fortunate position because I work from my home anyway. And mostly what I do is work from my home, then ride my bike, and then drink beer. And I repeat day after day after day. So from that standpoint, my life hasn't changed a hell of a lot. I do miss racing. I do notice that, without racing, I don't seem to have the same motivation to like put myself into the the pain locker, the hurt cave. I just don't. And but I used to, because the last thing you want to do is get in a Peloton on a road ride and then be the last guy off the back right after the beginning.
Well, but think about it this way, Bill. The love of riding, just the fact that you're out, you're free, you go out in sunshine, you're enjoying yourself, it's a healthy experience. Just ride for the sake of riding, rather than, looking at the Garmin, how many miles do I have, what are my watts, how fast am I going? What's my miles per hour? What's my Strava segment saying?
Enough said.
Just go out and enjoy the ride.
You got to understand, though, that's a lot right there. What you just said seemed easy to do, but in reality, it's like, oh, that's tough. Like today, I blasted down Cherub, and I wasn't really going fast. And I looked at my time, and I was six overall, and I was just cruising. And I thought, I can move way up. So I went up to the person in front of me. I figured that's my mark. I think Todd's at the top. No, Tim's at the top. He just told me yesterday. He went down, screamed it hard, and he could only get 35 seconds. So then I thought, well, Todd, what are you, 36 seconds?
I don't know.
There's
I don't know
a-
off the top of my head. Not far back.
Yeah, and there's probably a reason why. You probably...
I've ridden that trail maybe 5 times.
Yeah. So then I looked at number 5, and I hung my head in shame. I shouldn't say that. She's been really riding great. Mrs. Kool-Aid. Mrs. Kool-Aid was 5th. Oh, dude. So anyway, I gotta go out and do that again. Yeah, so everyone's doing different projects, in their home and stuff that they put off for years and years and years. One of the things I always threatened to do was run for president. And, well, Todd knows, and, we were all, I really miss the Hideaway. I miss going over there, rubbing elbows and shooting the shit and drinking beer. And I got to admit it, my wallet's a lot thicker these days because I must have been blowing a ton of money there. But
it's amazing how
no
much
offense,
more.
Alan.
It's amazing how much more money everyone has.
My wallet's thick as shit.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of money for buying illicit drugs and stuff now. Which
Whoa.
yeah. Okay.
Whoa.
All right. So anyway.
On the deck of
So anyway, we were over there after one of our group rides at night, as usually, yucking it up with the boys, drinking beers, elbow to elbow, just loving life, doing what we normally do. And
Well, don't tell too many people we're having a good time.
yeah. Okay.
It'll draw a crowd.
I was torn because I was putting on weight, and I knew I had to get up and train early the next day, and I was disgusted with my slovenly habits. And then there was always room for a shot and a beer, and then the next thing I know, I'm going home late and drunk. Anyway, at that point, Krause was there, and I don't go off politically on my Facebook page. I don't too much. I don't want to contaminate my. So
understatement of the year.
No, I don't.
I think I'm going to leave right now.
No, if you look at mine, it's not that. It's not that much, man. I've taken it off. See, I put it up for a while just to tease people, and then I take it down. So all you'll find is biking shit on there. But I go on Krause's.
It's like, what
What the hell? I didn't know I was coming to a comedy show.
The indication is when you're commenting on your own post.
Oh
That's when
yeah.
it's too bad.
Okay, you got it.
Over and over again.
I want to make sure that's a teaching thing. Repeat.
Oh, I see.
It's the learning sandwich. First, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to ask you what I said, and see if you remember. So anyway, Krause, all the boys were around, and somebody said, yeah, you're all talk. Why don't you, if you know so much, why don't you run for president? I go, I think I will. That's on my damn bucket list. And then Todd was there, and he's like, dude, I got it. Because we'd always have the story about no left turn on stone. And he goes, I got perfect what your campaign slogan's going to be, and I got the vision in my mind. And it was that day, one of those days, and I've lost track of them, that we decided that's it. That's the program, Gretna Bill 2020, no left turn on stone. So I might as well tell everybody how that got started. I don't think everybody knows the story. Todd, you didn't even really remember it
Not
in that
really,
way.
until you reminded me.
So I'm down in Jamaica, like I've been there every year for like 40 years. And I'm cruising down this road, and British Empire, of course, Jamaica was owned by the British Empire. So I'm on the left side of the road, and I'm cruising down. And there's a legit, and I'm roster recreating as usual. So my mind's a little bit, twisted, dyslectic kind of to begin with. And I'm looking at this sign, and it says, no left turn on stone. And I stopped my bike, and I was like, Eureka! This is amazing. And it's just so much, as you can imagine, so much stuff went through my head. And then I looked to my left, and there was actually a dirt road with no stone on it. So it was no left turn on stone. And I was like, this is brilliant. Someday I'm going to make $1 million selling t-shirts. And so Todd goes, now's your chance, dude. You combine that right. No left turn on stone. So if you guys want one of those t-shirts, and I got one for everybody here, I think. It's PayPal me $27. $20 for the t-shirt, $7 for shipping. and PayPal me Bill at Lupine, of course, Lupine Lights, Bill at lupinenorthamerica.com, all one word lowercase, and I'll send you one of these t-shirts. They're really cool. It's a great collector's item. And so that's how the t-shirt got started. That's how the campaign got started. And so as I was digressing earlier, I said, you know how we all have little projects at home that we're finally doing with all our time now? That's one thing I always wanted to do, is run for president. So now I am, thanks to Todd with the logo. Now we got the t-shirts. So we got everything but a sex scandal pretty much, and we're good to go. So for running for president, right? I'm joking about Biden right now. So, you know, when I was a kid around the dinner table, my dad was like an up-and-coming young executive. And so, like, you know, we used to actually have dinner and not look at the TV then, you know, in those days. And so, like, our banter around the kitchen table was weird shit. Like, nobody, you know, my grandfather was a township supervisor, and my dad was a Republican, and my mom was a Democrat. And so we'd talk about weird shit. Like, my dad would talk about management by objectives. That was our dinner talk. And this is how we're going to do it when I become president, you know, of his company. We talk about, like, Dale Carnegie, management by objectives, the Peter Principle, all these old management schools of thought that still exist, actually, about job descriptions and everything. So anyway, one day he comes home and he goes, you know, I just got promoted. I'm president of this small fabrication. When we lived in Ohio, steel fabrication was a big thing. I'm president of the company. And I'm like, Eureka. So I go, that means you don't have a boss, right? And he goes, oh, no. No, son, everybody has a boss. He goes, actually, I have two bosses, of course, mother being one, and the second being the board of directors of the company. And I'm like, whoa. I go, I bet you I can figure out, because I'm thinking king and shit in my mind. I go, I bet you I can figure out somebody who doesn't have a boss. I went to bed, thought about it. Next morning, Dad, it's the President of the United States. He goes, no. He goes, their boss is who? Who's the boss of the President of the United States? I'm like, all intrigued. I'm 11 years old. I'm like, I gotta hear this shit. And he goes, it's the people. I'm like, get the hell out. Well, you can imagine if you're 11 years old, right? And you're the boss of nobody your whole life. All right? And somebody tells you you're the boss of somebody. I'm like, me? He goes, me? He goes, yeah, you, dude. You're the people. I'm like, this is great. This is the greatest thing. Well, I spent the rest of my life trying to figure out why that isn't the case. I mean, it's supposed to be, but like I have zero input. Next thing you know, it's Vietnam, 4 dead in Ohio. I'm like, well, who are these guys, the federal government? I don't know if I like them or not. So anyway, on my bucket list was this thing that I figured I'd run for president someday. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't really want the job, okay? And then I realized when I said that, it's like the shittiest job in the world. Who would want to do it? Like Todd. Hey, you got to get up in the morning and shit, and right away you're on TV or something, and Twitter, and there's all kind of people coming into your office wanting you to do shit. And you're like, oh, jeez. You got no privacy. Like, who would want this job? Why would anybody want the job? You know, and relatively speaking, you go into industry, you make way more money. It's like the shittiest job in the world. So I started thinking, why would you really want the job? And then I thought, well, you got to have some ulterior motive, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't do that shit. Like, my long 4-hour days of riding bike and drinking beer with Ed are over. Those days are over. And that's what I really want to do. So I'm thinking nobody should want this job unless they've got some kind of a screwball. You know, people say that I'm a wing nut. They got to be wing nuts. Right. So then I realized that I don't want the job. So therefore, my motives were clear and true. So I thought, I'm the only person in the world that's really qualified. Because I don't really want the job. And reminded me of a quote, which we talked about earlier, William Tecumseh Sherwin.
Sure.
And what did he say?
It's your show.
If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. So, where were we, Ed?
You were about ready to explain why you are interested in the presidency.
Right. Okay. So here's the deal. So all my life I've been wanting to do this. Now I have the time to do it. And I explain my motives are true because I don't really want the job. So that puts me perfectly in place for it and under my set of criteria. So then I realized, and that's why Ed's here, his expertise is going to be fundamental in your understanding of where I'm going with this. So, so basically, it's a job. So you work for the people. But there's no job description. There's no job design. But there is kind of.
Well, originally, if you take a look at the Constitution, Article 2 spells out exactly what the job of the president is. And clearly, the framers of the Constitution felt that the legislative branch was much more important. Because if you take a look at the Constitution, the list of powers in Article 1 are numerous. When you get to Article 2, it's a very short description of what the president really is empowered to do via the Constitution. He has gained more power over the course of history, doing things in the legislative branch, granting him authority and acquiescing to his will than the actual framers ever envisioned.
So the actual framers are sitting around, and you got England you got the King of England being a king. You know, he wants everything, he's greedy, he keeps raising taxes, you know, all the shit that the federal government's doing now. And so that was the basis of it all, right? They were like, do not let another king get in power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. How are we going to mediate that, moderate that?
Well, I think that the lesson, the experience that the framers had dealing with the King of England really dictated how they went about writing the Constitution.
Sweet. So you guys all remember the Boston Tea Party? What happened there?
No taxation.
So no taxation without representation. So they said, we'll fix him. We're going to take all that British tea that's over there in the harbor and we're going to dump it in the ocean. Is that what happened?
Pretty much.
So now, if we were to do that, we would be dumping THC. No, we wouldn't. Come on. No, we wouldn't do that. We would just go, okay, right. Because that's being taxed. Okay.
Where the heck did we go?
So anyway, taxation without representation. It sure seems that way today, right? I don't have any say on the way I get taxed. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, supposedly my representatives, but that's what we're going to get into. So, all right. So I determined that I'm qualified because I don't want the job. And I determined that there is no job description, theoretically, except for what you just said. So I figured I'd try to say what I believe the job description is, which I think everybody should explain. Like, the thing about running for office is you never hear what you need to hear. Like, you don't hear from Biden or Trump or anybody about, like, what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. They always tell you what they're going to do in their minds. It's like, no. We're in charge here, dude. We're going to tell you what you're supposed to be doing. Part of that's the Constitution. And the other thing is, now, you know, I used to always rant about balanced budgets. We're way beyond that. Okay, we're into crypto, federal coin, Bitcoin. There's just numbers. Government bank account, numbers. Goes to the Treasury Department, numbers, digits. It's all bizarre. So forget about the balanced budget crap I wanted to do. So I don't think there's a real solid job description, and I fault the media and the president for not saying, this is what I'm supposed to do for you. Like, the State of the Union address every February is a joke to me. It's like he comes on and he goes, these are all the great things I did, and all of his buddies, all his mafia compatriots, they clap, clap, clap. Whoa. It's like, whoa, dude. Were you even supposed to do that crap? So it's like you, Todd, or Ed, when you worked. How about every year when you go for your review for your job to your boss, you go in and you start off by going, all the shit I did this year was fantastic, and here's why, blah, 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 the job. But the boss goes, hold on. You didn't do shit like I told you to do, okay? Here's your job description. You didn't do it, okay? Is that a reasonable course of events? Like, you couldn't blow your own horn and say, what a great job you did. So I think the State of the Union address is a bunch of crap, all right?
Okay.
So what we're going to determine is, what is he supposed to be doing, Mr. President or Mrs. President? So that's why Ed's here, because Ed, a little bit on your resume, a little bit on your background here to help me out here with this project.
Political science major, economics minor, taught civics for 34 years.
Enough said. So at the root of this whole thing is this, and hopefully I don't have spell check. How's that? Everybody see that? Constitution, right? That's where it all gets started. So up here, you got the legislative branch. Is that correct, Ed?
Article 1.
Article 1. I'll put that up there. I like that. I like it when you say that, Article 1. So, now correct me if I'm wrong, but the legislative branch is all of us, right? It's all of us. Okay, we're supposed to produce the laws and policies that govern us. So when anybody says about, the president should be doing this, we should be that, it's like, no, dude, you should be participating in the legislative branch, right? That's where it all gets started. So the power, and when I said about, the job, I'm supposed to be in control, that's why we're not in control. I don't know who those people are, okay? I don't know who Mitch McConnell is or whatever he's doing, but it ain't what I want done. So the legislative branch is where all the policy is supposed to be made. Not coming from the president, not top down, okay? Bottom up, grassroots. That's you and me, okay? Is that a fair statement?
The
Can you
legislative,
elaborate
we all know we've got two senators, and our House of Representatives based on the total population. So we do have a grassroots representative in the House that represents a smaller area. That our civic responsibility is to communicate with those people. Very few people do. So that's the first failing of the system.
Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to draw this circle because it kind of goes like that, right? And you'll see where I'm going with that.
Okay.
So that's who should be running the country, not the president. You don't elect a president to run the country. You elect a president to make sure the legislative branch does their freaking job. Okay, let's be clear on that.
Well, I would even disagree with that. I would say going back to what you said, you and I, everyone in this room, everyone watching, we're responsible for making sure the legislative branch does their job. The president then simply enforces our wishes.
Thank you. So he doesn't set the policy. He doesn't set the tone.
But he does, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, he does, and we're going to talk about
our system is so perverted now that he sets the tone.
So let's say that it's working the way it's supposed to. Then we all have a participation in, and we participate to the grassroots level up, and we talk to our local representatives, and they blah, 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 and we get shit that we want done. We say, okay, enact that. So there's one small problem. We don't know as people, we're not experts on the Constitution. We don't know the precedent. So we're not quite sure if it's like constitutional. So lo and behold, what do we got over here, Ed?
Get the judicial branch.
How do you spell that? Is that right?
Article 3.
Thank you. What's Article 2 again?
Executive branch.
Right. That's coming up. All right, so you got the judicial branch. So these guys, so supposedly from the ground up, you got the grassroots, you got the legislative. They make the laws and policies, right? And then it goes over to judicial, and it can be tested by what? It can be tested by civil suits, a lot of different ways to test it, court cases. But the judicial says, hey, wait, I know you guys want me to do it, or I know you guys want to enact this law, but I got to tell you, I don't think it's constitutional. Right? Is that a fair statement? How would you describe judicial?
Well, they simply interpret the laws and make sure that they are applied fairly and evenly per the Constitution.
Okay. How's that? Is that good?
Okay.
All right. So then obviously, what do we have down here?
You got the executive.
This is a tough one to spell.
Oh, you got it. Article 2.
Okay, and this goes like this, all right? And so what does the executive branch do, Ed?
Technically, the executive branch is the commander-in-chief of our military, negotiates treaties with the consent, two-thirds consent of the Senate, appoints judges with consent, and enforces the laws of the legislative branch.
And he's got various departments and tools underneath him, right? DOJ, Department of Justice.
Well, I mean, his whole cabinet. I think originally, and it's been a few years, but I think originally his cabinet was made up of maybe 4 departments.
Okay. So he's basically in charge of making sure that the legislative does what they're supposed to freaking do.
Well, no, not really. All the executive branch does is once the legislative branch passes legislation, he signs it. I mean, he's actually got 3 choices. He can either sign it, he can veto it, or within 10 days of the legislative branch going out of session, he can not do anything, and it's referred to as a pocket veto. And then nothing happens with that piece of legislation.
Pocket veto.
Yes, it's a 10-day deal. Let's say that the legislative branch is trying to rush to get a lot of pieces of legislation passed quickly at the end of a session, and it goes to the president for his signature, and Congress goes out of session within 10 days. The president has the power to do nothing. In other words, just let it sit on his desk, and Congress goes out of session within 10 days. It's an automatic veto. So he can use that politically, so he can say, well, I didn't veto that. I wasn't against it. Congress just went out of session, and I didn't get to it. So he's not tied to that veto.
They do have a lot of vacations too, don't those guys?
Congress is in session about 100 days a year.
Out of 360.
65. Yeah, so I mean, you imagine having a job where you only have to work 100 days, and you got full.
Now that job I take. It's the president's job that I.
Well.
Yeah. So. Okay, there you have it, folks. So it seems pretty simple. Theoretically, I would actually take the job if it worked like that, because all it would be is turnkey. I just step into the office and know that these guys are doing what they're supposed to be freaking doing, and these guys are doing what they're doing. All I got to do is make sure that it happens, right? I just got to enforce it.
And
piece of cake.
And appoint very qualified individuals to your departments that you can trust them and they know what they're doing.
So then I got a military problem in Sudan. I just call in the big boys and I'm like, yo, what should we do? And they tell me.
I mean, you call in your Secretary of State, your Secretary of Defense, your Joint Chiefs of Staff. I think a perfect example of how that all worked was the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, Kennedy took advice from everybody. He didn't see the military as a bunch of idiots giving him poor advice. I mean, he weighed all the options before he made a decision. And that's what a president has to do.
My second favorite president, right behind Eisenhower, modern day. So, okay. So, to your point, you had a post the other day that I thought was really interesting. And, you know, my whole deal is to try to reduce the size and scope of the federal government. Everybody knows that. But each crisis that we've had has ratcheted up their control and everything else. So it's kind of been counterintuitive for me. It's like, I don't like what's going on here. So your post was something that, as I said before, turnkey. This should be turnkey. Everything should be running along smoothly, no problems. Unless there's a crisis that wasn't anticipated by any of these 3 departments. Then all of a sudden you need a leader. And that was your point. So that would be a point where you actually need not necessarily a big federal government, but just an effectively organized federal government. Would that be a fair statement? To your point that you made the post, and I just want you to elaborate if you can a bit.
I think that this pandemic has really exposed the underbelly, the ugly underbelly of America, in that we're so polarized politically that the government ceases to operate efficiently because we are that polarized and nobody wants to work together.
Okay, fair enough. So that's kind of the way I see it. I could almost make the key, going back to my turnkey thing, which is what we all, bicyclists. Basically, I'm only trying to say this because the way I want life to happen is I want these guys to do everything they're supposed to do, him to enforce it, so I don't have any problems. So I can go out and ride and drink beer, and I won't have to worry about shit when I get home, right? That's what we're paying them for. Talking about, going back to my thing about, well, what are we actually paying the government for? We're not paying them, okay, so they can be self-sustaining and glorified and travel around the world in jets, wear suit and tie all the freaking time. No. Okay? I'm paying you to manage affairs while I'm out riding my bike and drinking beer. Okay? That's what I'm paying you for. I'm in charge. I'm paying you knuckleheads to make sure everything don't become a mess so I can continue to ride by. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement.
So what I'm hearing is
Painfully fair.
that it's not the government that has let us down.
Aha!
The government hasn't let us down. We've let ourselves down.
Right.
We are uneducated. We are apathetic, and we have no understanding of what the issues really are.
Thank you. So, everybody wants, pandemic is definitely, everyone wants to place blame on the pandemic. China, Trump didn't act quick enough, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's got blame to go around. To your point, where's the blame? Where's it at, Todd? What am I going to circle here? I'm going to circle legislative. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it's their job to figure this shit out. Okay, so long time ago, after we had Ebola, MERS, SARS, they should have said, look, we've got to take a good look, long, hard look at pandemic, the response, whether it's biological warfare or it happens naturally, this shit's real. And that's the biggest threat we have. So the legislators should have been talking about this all the freaking time. But why weren't they, Ed?
George Bush, many people feel that he wasn't a great leader, but George Bush warned us of the pandemic. Obama warned us of the pandemic, that we needed to be prepared.
Peter Navarro?
I mean, we had consecutive presidents who said that it's just it's not if, it's when.
So I faulted on the legislature. So they were the guys that say, hey, look, there's a lot of things that can bring us down. Like today on the news, that murder killer hornet, right?
Killer hornets.
Right. They're going, you should see how sinister they look. And they're going, and they're taking the throats right out of these bees and leaving the heads. Okay, this is serious shit. So that's what the legislators should be talking about. Invasive. Whether it's a virus or whether it's a bee or it's a killer bee from Mexico, whatever, they should be going, let's take a look at all these threats to our life. A counterexample to that is when there's a terrorist, and he shoots something up down in San Diego or whatever, there's a lot of examples. Oh, the FBI was all over that. They were going to, well, how did this start? They were in, Afghanistan looking at the cause. They looked at the guy's wife. They wanted his cell phone. It was a big deal. Now, if you can imagine that the first couple of coronavirus cases in the United States were like the first couple of terrorists. And they went in there with, like Arlo Guthrie style, and they brought out the guns and the weapons and the microscopes and all that. And they would have got after it like they get after terrorism. Anybody want to hypothesize as to what the outcome might have been today? If they with the same degree of resources was that they go after one terrorist.
Well, there's a firm in Canada called Blue Dot, and they have a technology that is able to track things such as this. And to all their clients, on December the 31st, 2019, they warned all their clients that this was going to be a worldwide pandemic.
Wow.
When did we start talking about it?
Into February?
I understand what you're saying about the legislative branch, but in a time of emergency, it all falls on the shoulders of the president.
All right. So
he has to rally everyone.
Okay, solid point. So both points are sort of valid to a certain extent. We are to blame, but not really, because, well, one good news is, I'm going to be a bit optimistic, is that after every time that we have a crisis, we usually make the world better. Like the 9/11 thing really ramped up airport security to the fact where we've been really safe from hijacking. So I suspect that this is going to make us really safe from pandemic, but who knows?
But here we go again. The United States is always reactive rather than proactive.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for taking that out of this. So that's my problem with the legislature. They are always reactive instead of proactive management. And that's the worst. It almost is profound in that it supports the Republicans and the Democrats. It's almost like they don't create these disasters, but they like them to happen because then they can get more power and they can come in and say, hey, we're here from the government. We're going to help you get out of this. Oh, thank you, sir, government. Oh, thank you. I couldn't live without you. Right there, buddy. So, okay, so that's what I'm saying here, that they're reactive. Now, why are they reactive instead of proactive? So these are the things that if I were king, I'd change. And you know where I'm going with this? I'm going to put something up here right away that'll break that bullshit thinking up. What do you think about that, Ed?
I don't think the framers of the Constitution envisioned professional politicians.
No career politicians. Get them out of there. No more pension funds. Screw that. Dude, you go back and get a job when you're done. And that'll get rid of all them trying to maintain the federal. Like my cousin, who's my financial advisor. You know, he actually got appointed. He went all the way up in one particular instance. He became president of a small insurance company, and it was the classic story. My dad tells you these stories too. When he eventually became vice president at General Electric, and they tell the same stories. Like they go in and they say, "Okay, show me around the new company or my new department," and you know somebody takes them around from human resources or whatever. Some you know, whatever. I was one of those guys. Anyway, they take him around and they'd say, now, what does this person do? Let me, I don't know what department manager. I want to go up in the back room. And there's some lady in there, you know, in the 70s, you had these long computer mini-tab reports that would come out. They were like that thick. And she's working all day and getting this report out. And then she's got to distribute it manually to all these departments. So my cousin Larry goes, so what exactly is that report for? She goes, well, I don't know. She goes, I took this job over. You know, they told me to get this report done, so I get it done, and then I distribute it to all these people. So Larry goes, let me see the list, man. So he goes over to the people, and he goes, hey, you get this report every month? He goes, oh, yeah. We've been getting that report for months. I go, what do you do with it? I don't know. When I took the job over, I just got the report. You know, so I don't even know what the hell it's for. We don't use it anymore. So my point is that when you become a legislature, and that's your job, and especially if you're a career legislature, then what do? You go in every day and you figure out, I gotta legislate shit, dude. That's my job. You don't have to legislate every day. But so it's almost profound that it produces job security because that's what you think you gotta do. Well, I'm here to serve the people. I gotta make a new law today. Ed, please comment on that.
Well, the fact of the matter is that of all the proposed bills ever put forth by legislators, only 2% actually ever become law.
So what are they doing up there with their time? They're just spinning their wheels.
Most of the time, they're sitting in committees or subcommittees, you know, participating in the legislative process of doing research and having public hearings, and having their assistants do research into the proposed bills. But most of the time, they spend back in their home district running for re-election.
Thank you. Term limits, dude. So I'm not talking about any draconian shift under my administration or anything. I'm just talking about little tweaks that if we start doing them now, we can gradually change. Like, for example, you remember when General Motors went down in the 70s? It was largely because they had dudes that had been in that same job 40 years. Chrysler, yeah. Well, I'm talking 1977. Chrysler. Okay, it was still Chrysler before Lee Iacocca. So what I'm suggesting is that when you look at McConnell or any of these other knotheads, they've been in office so long that they're still basing it on what they were supposed to do in 1968 or whatever.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you take a look at the amount of money that has flowed into Kentucky since Mitch McConnell has become the majority leader per capita, it's incredible.
Yeah. So that's where the system's all screwed up. It starts with term limits. So you got to get career politicians out of there. That's what I'm saying.
Well, to play the devil's advocate for just a second, imagine if we had constant turnover and nobody knew what the heck they were doing.
The stock market would love that. I guarantee it.
But the fact of the matter is, then we would not be a country run by elected officials. We would be a country that was run simply by bureaucrats. the people that you were saying, like the lady who took all the information was spit out. Those are the people that would be running the country, and they're not elected. So I mean, there has to be a happy medium somewhere. But term limits, I think most people would say is a good idea. But the fact of the matter is, it probably takes. As a school teacher, I was told you're not going to be very good for at least 5 years.
Yeah.
So, being thrown into something like this, unless you've come up through the system, that you've done the grassroots work, you've done like a borough councilman, township commissioner, you've been in the state legislature, you've actually gone through all those steps that you really know what you're doing, and you've educated yourself. Now you've made the big leagues. Take a look at sports. I mean, baseball. You maybe single A, double A, triple A. You make the major leagues. All along there, you're learning your profession.
Nice pushback. And FML tells me that all the time. She goes, I went and observed what they do. It's complicated shit. So how about this? So you start off and you run for, like Joe Shea, you run for mayor of Mount Gretna. And then you decide to run for state representative. And then you got term limits. And then you run for senator of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Then you run for a lieutenant governor and then you run for a representative, congressman. And then you run for Senate. And then you decide to run for president. So that would still give you that. And it was still all done under the context of term limits.
Exactly.
Okay, so both goals can be achieved.
But let's look at people's resumes. Let's just not, fall for somebody's personality.
So then that gets to the root of it. I'm suggesting with term limits, then when you vote somebody, you got to actually look at their resume for a job.
But then once again, we have career politicians, and that's the one thing we're kind of railing against.
And if you get rid of career politicians, then instead of just voting, hey, how did Trump vote today? What's Trump want us to do? Oh, that's where my vote goes. You'd actually research. Like at every one of those voting Senate things they sit in, whether it's the Senate or the House, they should have a computer there and they should have all the facts. Like, is this opioid crisis? How's it affecting us? What's state by state? What are the problems? Who are the drug companies? They should have the data, and they should make decisions on data, not on what their almighty leader tells them to do.
They do. I mean, that's what the purpose of the subcommittees and the committee meetings are all about. As a representative, you can vote the way you feel individually about a subject.
Yeah.
You can be a representative and simply vote the way your people want you to vote. You can be like a politico and simply vote the party line. I mean, there's a lot of options open. I mean, you can be a true representative and say to the people, I'm coming to a town meeting. Tell me what you want.
Yeah.
A great example of that is our lieutenant governor went to all 67 counties and said, what do you think about the legalization of marijuana in Pennsylvania? And everybody had the opportunity to attend a public meeting.
Outstanding.
And state, well, I figured that would catch your attention.
It did.
And state your opinion. And what he found after going to all 67 counties was a majority of Pennsylvanians favor the legalization of marijuana. But he, went to the people and said, what do you want?
So, how did marijuana become illegal? So there was two driving forces. First, there was the emperor wears no clothes.
Don't get off track.
All right. My point is that that's where the federal government led you down a false narrative in the 60s and 70s because they didn't like anti-war protesters and they knew they were all smoking weed. So, yeah. Well,
actually, if you want to get right down to it, the criminalization of marijuana had to do back in the 20s and 30s because
J. Edgar Hoover.
Well, it was actually tied to black jazz and blues musicians, and we used it as a racial sort of thing to outlaw marijuana, and it really has its basis in
and then there was all the William Randolph Hearst and J.P. Morgan and all those guys owned cotton and timber industry, and they didn't want the hemp industry.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is that as a legislator, you can either vote your own conscience, you can vote the way your constituents want you to vote, or you can vote the way your political party wants you to vote. And unfortunately, today, we find way too many legislators are falling in line politically. That if Nancy Pelosi says this is the way we're going to vote, Chuck Schumer says this is the way we're going to vote, or Mitch McConnell says this is the way we're going to vote, that's the way they vote.
And it's probably reinforced. They're ass lickers, all of them. And so then the next thing that
That
happens
reminds me of the Last Kingdom. But anyway, go ahead.
So then the next thing that happens is they got this big lobby group, right? Whether it's drugs or oil or whatever. And they come in and they say, hey, how you voting, dude? Hey, you want to go out for lunch for a moment and talk about how you're voting, right?
Political action committees and lobbying has pretty much destroyed representative government in the United States.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to do is no more lunches, no more golfs, no more strip clubs. I want a cafeteria. And I want all them guys just to be in a dorm room and go into a cafeteria to eat whenever they come to Washington. No,
Well, I thought you were looking for a political sex scandal.
yeah, well, that'll come.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, if you're canceling out the strip clubs, you're canceling out your sex scandal, though.
Deborah, don't look at
Okay,
this.
sorry.
All right, so judicial. So what can I do there to kind of make it better? Well, I'm going to do one thing. So this always bugged me about my life is the appointment of judges, right? I have that power, right? Is that true, Ed?
The President of the United States offers up a name for nomination, and then the Senate approves that nomination.
Okay, so I can get the ball rolling and nominate somebody I want to. So I never understood this. If I'm going to, this is one thing I pledge to you. And remember, if I'm nominated, I will not run, and if I'm elected, I will not serve. But some bizarre twist of nature somehow finds me in that position. I would say that I would pick a judge who is not far left in his decisions over his career resume or far right. I go, if you're trying to pick a judge, Ed, wouldn't you think you'd pick a judge that actually did judgments based on the situation instead of, I'm going to go conservative on this all the way?
So what you're saying is you want somebody that's pragmatic?
Yeah, like a real judge. Isn't that what a judge is for?
So,
should we cut the baby's head off or not? I'm bringing in a judge. Let him decide.
Well, I mean, let's face it. 80% of people are somewhere just right of center or left of center.
Yeah.
Most people aren't out on the fringes like we see, happening in America today.
Well, like Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, I mean,
They're out in the fringe for sure.
I just think that most Americans fall a little to the right or a little to the left. Most of us are just moderates. I don't see where the big thing is polarizing the United States and being left wing and right wing.
I don't see it either. I mean, we're all pretty much similar. And I don't really see a big difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. I don't like either of them, but I don't really see the big deal. They're pretty much the same. Like if you were an alien looking down on the two parties, you go, what are they fighting about? They're both the same. They're both moronic for the most part.
Well, and that's kind of leads to what you're talking about, third party candidates.
Nah. And everybody faults me and says, I'm not wasting my vote on that. I don't blame them. Like, if you're anti-Trump, you're not going to waste your vote.
Well, we've never had a history of anything more than a two-party system. I mean, you take a look at, like say Italy. At one time, they had like 15 different political parties.
My home country. For good reason. I love that. I wish we had 15 or 20 parties.
I mean, usually when you see an independent, a third party, it's either based on, like, say, an individual. Go back to like 1968, George Wallace, the American, I forget, I think it was called like the American Independent Party.
Yeah, I think you're right.
He actually won electoral votes, which I won't say helped Nixon win, but it was a fairly close election. 1912, I mean, obviously that's kind of way in the past, but Theodore Roosevelt was unhappy with the way Taft was running the country, so he formed the Bull Moose Party.
Thanks.
And
I love that name.
Well, actually,
I would join that just on name. Thought about it.
Well, it's pretty impressive, though. I mean, he was giving a speech, and an assassin shot him in the chest while he was giving the speech.
Whoa, I forgot about that.
And he actually had the speech tucked into his jacket, and the bullet embedded in the speech, actually embedded in his chest, but the speech itself prevented from killing him. And he gave the rest of the speech before going to a doctor. But the fact of the matter is that because he ran against Taft, that, Taft was a Republican, Roosevelt was a Republican, that made it possible for Woodrow Wilson to win the election.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yes.
Huh.
We've got, we have, remember Lyndon LaRouche and Perot. We have a history of third parties, but never anything that's been able to garner many votes. Rarely do they win electoral votes.
Right. So the Electoral College is definitely, I rail against it all the time because of that. Because, my example was that if you've got, NFL has 30, 32 teams?
32, I believe.
And so you'd say you can only recruit and draft from 2 colleges. Right? How good do you think the league's going to be? Each year it'll be a law of diminishing returns. They'll be shitty. Right? And especially when you put them on the world. Let's say there's a football or soccer team league in Europe, and they go and draft from all over the world. Or they got 15 parties, so they're bringing people in from all over. And then you say finally, hey, it's either Republicans or the Democrats, and these guys will kick anybody's ass. It's like, no, you won't, because you've been drafting from 2 stupid schools the whole time, and you really not got, tested from all different angles. You go to Europe, where there's 15, 16 parties, and you're going to get blown away, dude. You're going to get crushed. That's my logic.
Well, third parties either come about, once again, because of individuals or some sort of need for an ideological change or a particular issue. During our childhood, and it just comes to mind, the American Communist Party, what was his name? Gus Hall?
Gus Hall.
Was it Gus Hall?
Yeah, it was.
He ran for president 7 times.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, because I remember one election, Angela Davis was his VP running mate. Everybody makes a big deal about Geraldine Ferraro in, I say 84, running with Walter Mondale against Reagan.
Yeah.
But Angela Davis, if you take third parties into consideration, she was really the first female. On a presidential ticket.
Thinking back on Senator McCain's run with Palin,
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of the precursor to the Trump kind of thought, because it didn't work then, but her kind of a philosophy is kind of what
you
carried over into Trump policy, and
you have
won over that.
You have Biden saying that his VP nominee will be a female.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
Again, Biden is the middle of the road conservative candidate that's drummed up by a 2-party system that's probably going to be okay. But in the end, you're not getting Elon Musk. You know what I mean? You're getting the president of General Motors 1977 that's just like, hey, everything's cool. We don't got to worry about shit. Just keep doing the shit the way we used to do it. And it's like, you're not getting Elon Musk with this policy, with this.
Right.
Goes,
I'm saying with all the female candidates, potential candidates are out there, where do you think he'll go? Do you think
that lady in California that understands about debt?
Camille Harris?
Camille Harris.
I'm going to go with the governor of Michigan.
Oh, Whitmer.
Because Democrats are going to carry California no matter who Biden picks. But the fact of the matter is, Hillary Clinton did not win the White House because of the Electoral College not carrying Michigan, not carrying Wisconsin, not carrying Ohio.
That's pretty solid reason.
So, he wants to balance out the ticket. And quite honestly, she stood up to Trump this past week and told him, I'm running the show, not your Twitter account.
Yeah, brilliant. That's good.
That's where I would go, but I'm not Joe Biden.
Yeah, thank God. How's everybody over at your house? Cindy, Daisy, Chester?
Keeping isolated.
That's the most important thing.
We've towed the line pretty good.
So, Ed, that's what I'm going to do. Basically nothing. Because you guys should be doing it all. I should just be rolling in there, and if shit hits the fan, I'll be ready. And the way I'll be ready is I'll be keeping fit, riding my bike, drinking beer with my buddies. So should a crisis occur, you can count on me to be ready. But you guys should be doing all the heavy lifting.
Well,
Is that correct?
but the thing is, though, Bill, we've got a shitstorm of problems.
Like,
We don't have proper health care for everybody.
oh,
You know, some people think it's a privilege. Some people think it's a right. A fair working wage. I mean, really, this pandemic has really showed a lot of issues. Right now, 1% of the population, which is the wealthiest, is getting all the social welfare, so to speak. You know, it's amazing how many people are against socialism. I'm against socialism. You know, how have you liked the last 2 months of socialism? We haven't gotten any socialism. That $1,200 check was a joke.
totally.
I mean, take a look at the corporations. They're getting billions and billions of dollars.
And it's not very transparent. Let's face it, every crisis, like let's look at 2008, which was caused by the government. And I believe this was caused by the government, by the legislation, not looking at it quicker. Basically, every time you can trace the origin of these crises back to inefficient management. And then their cure-all is what we all look to, which keeps them in power. It's profound. It's a bizarre cycle.
We let airlines do stock back. You know, they buy back their stock to drive the price up for their stockholders.
So it's been said, even by Warren Buffett, that every crisis, the rich get richer, the big corporations through like monopolies and stuff, and other corporations fading by assimilation, they get stronger, and the people just struggle along as usual. So that's what's increasing the gap. It's not any of these other forces like Elizabeth Warren would have you to believe. It's the damn federal government that's causing all this bullshit to begin with.
How is it that after...
Son of a bitch.
Damn it!
How is it, though, that after most Americans missing one paycheck, their lives have gone to total shit?
And where corporations, and you know, Rusty and I were talking about that the other day. You look at the stock market, it's not that bad. Why? Just because of what you said. The rich are getting richer, and every crisis, there's all this money funneled into them. And you know, that would be my last statement, is I wanted to shoot for a balanced budget. I want to shoot for a balanced budget. Forget it.
Yeah. That ship sailed a long time ago, Bill.
That ship sailed a long time ago. So now we're talking about digits. Digits appear in the government bank account. The government moves them, like the $2.2 trillion for PPP, moves it into the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department goes and hires a hedge fund dude, the BlackRock guys, and then they disseminate to all the banks, and then the banks give it out to you. So basically, it's digits, it's cyber currency. My point is that, shit, I lost track.
So how is it, let me ask you this, how is it that Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury, who was supposedly in charge of the distribution of all the small business loans, allowed publicly held companies to get the money, whereas people who were out on their own with their own small businesses didn't get squat? You know, if I'll tell you what, you're running, but if I was in charge, every single household would have got $50,000.
At least.
End of story. No, $50,000. I don't care what they do with it, and the economy would have been just fine.
It's the whole basis, which we'll go into next time, and I've been studying up on it. Modern monetary theory, which we've gone way beyond the gold standard. We've gone way beyond debt that equals the. All we're doing is, again, creating digits, putting them in the federal bank number, like Mnuchin does that, and Larry Kudlow, and all Larry Kudlow, oh yeah, you know what's going on, Stephen Moore. And then they give it to the Treasury Department, the Treasury Department gives it to the banks. So it's very interesting. So forget about the balanced budget. We're way beyond that. That, like you said, that horse has left the barn. Very interesting, very interesting. And the thing of it is, you and I, and the people without health insurance, I see them all the time on Oprah, and, you know, Sanjay's always got these people on. I'm sorry, I'm starting to, you know, fund me, and I'm sending you money for your you can't even get insulin, you know, for $300 to $500. And yet, all those major corporations who took the last break 4 years ago, and they bought back their own stock, 90% of that money, They bought back their own sauce. So they basically enriched themselves. And here they are again, those same companies enriching themselves again. And don't get me wrong. The system sort of works by testimony. And I'm sitting here drinking beer, talking about it. If it didn't work, I'd be in some, I'd be chopping stones or wood somewhere.
You'd be in the gulag.
I'd be in the gulag in modern terms in Siberia. So the system sort of works. But it only works sort of because of that fact that I can sit here and bitch about it and drink beer. So, but anyway, it could work better. It could work a little better. And so that's all I'm talking about. I'm just talking about enriching us for a change a little bit more and making it tougher on corporations.
This is what he's talking about.
$27, you can get this. No left turn on stone. Dude, it's ultimate. It's a classic. Must have in your collection of t-shirts. Thank you. Bill at Lupine North America, PayPal, $27. You can have one too. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. And again, yeah, I'm running for president, but only to let my bicycling friends know what's up, like they don't already know it. I'm just trying to verbalize it, mainly for my benefit so I can figure it out. Because every time I prostitute myself, let's say, and I go on Krause's and I rebuttal this shit, as soon as I type out the shit, or even on mine, I'm immediately reminded when I look at it after I read it. That's the beauty of typing something up and putting it in print. I look at it and go, oh, that was stupid. And then if I don't do that, even though I think maybe that's not so stupid, then Ed will surely pipe in and go, Bill. No. Am I right on that?
Say goodbye.
All right, so there you have it. Gretna Bill 2020. Please buy a t-shirt. Yeah, and so we can all get back to riding bike. And that's what it's all about. And that's the only reason why I want to do this, because I don't trust the way these guys are going that I'm going to be able to ride bike for 3-4 hours and drink beer with my buddies. So that's my motivation. It's like, I don't know if they're going to get to that point. Seems like they're doing everything they can to prevent that.
I just have one last comment. I think that my students for the last 34 years probably would have enjoyed my lectures better while I was drinking beer.
Thank you. And I think so too. The point would have actually got across. And that's the point of this. I mean, I'm not trying to say that America's dumbed down or anything, but like seriously, how many of you have really sat down and thought how the shit's supposed to work? Todd, Josh, you guys, Ed and I have been talking about this, but let me ask you, did you learn a couple of little things about the way the system's supposed to work from today's lecture? Indeed. So everybody's got a little something they can learn from this, right? And then it'll give you something to think about, because all we want to do is cycle.
Drink beer, ride bicycle. That's what I heard. Right.
And so to do that, unfortunately, we got to make a decision come June in Pennsylvania and then November for the president. And so when you're riding your bike for endless hours, other than when you're joking and telling everybody how strong you've been on Strava and shit, you can actually go, hey, did you see the Gretna Bill show? He's made a few solid points. I'm glad he made that because it kind of helped me visualize what the hell should be going on that isn't going on. Okay, you guys in the peanut gallery, got anything for me? Todd?
That was a solid example.
So do you buy any of this shit?
I'm voting Gretna Bill.
Yeah, okay. So I can be a write-in. You did do your research on that. So.
Anybody can be a write-in.
Okay, so you can write me in. I know you don't want to waste your vote, but I will say this.
Don't waste your vote.
Yeah. If nominated, I will not run, and if elected, I will not serve. Peace out, everybody. Keep on riding your bike.